What's up, everybody? Going over today, starting the new series, How to Win Friends and Influence People, the only book you need to lead you to success. And I hope you guys will join me. This is one of those books that I thought I didn't really need to read. It's a classic, everyone's read it, but you know, there's a lot of fundamental stuff that I probably already know. Anyways, that's not the case. Dale Carnegie puts these stories as examples and makes you think about things you've never thought of. So I ask that you will join me. He says if you read the book, read it twice. Read each chapter twice. So if you've read it, please join me. And I think that we will learn a lot together. Let's do this. And before we start, check out this sunflower. You saw the sunflower field video. This thing is twice the size of any flower there. Look how it's depressed, man. It's depressed. They're holding it up with a rope in the back of its neck. Look at the camera. Let's get started. Alright, here we go. Chapter 1. And I'm not going to read this straight, but there is a lot to take away. And I'm going to read just a little bit. If you want to gather honey, don't kick over the beehive. So on May 7th, 1931, the most sensational manhunt New York City had ever known had come to its climax. After weeks of search, Two Gun Crowley, the killer, the gunman who didn't smoke or drink, was at bay, trapped in his sweetheart's apartment on West End Avenue. 150 policemen and detectives laid siege to his top-floor hideaway. They chopped holes in the roof. They tried to smoke out Crowley, the cop killer, with tear gas. Then they mounted their machine guns on surrounding buildings, and for more than 1 hour of New York's fine residential areas reverberated with the crack of pistol fire and the rat-tat-tat of machine guns. Crowley was crouching and trapped inside his girlfriend's apartment, and he wrote a letter saying, "To whom it may concern." And on this letter he wrote, "Under my coat is a wary heart, but a kind one that would do nobody any harm." Now, a short time before this, in Long Island on a road, a cop came up to him and asked Crowley, "Can I see your license?" Crowley shot the officer dead. He got out of his car, picked up the officer's revolver, and fired another 2 rounds into him. And this man just wrote, "I have a heart underneath this coat that would do nobody any harm." This criminal saying, "I'm not guilty, I would never do something like this." We move on. We see some other famous criminals. Al Capone, America's most notorious public enemy, the most sinister gang leader who ever shot up Chicago. He said, "I've spent the best years of my life giving people the lighter pleasures, helping them have a good time, and all I get is abuse, the existence of a hunted man." Capone didn't condemn himself. He actually regarded himself as a public benefactor, an unappreciated and misunderstood public benefactor. Benefactor meaning a disposition to do good. This man this avoidance, this doubt avoidance of, "I'm no criminal. How dare you call me a criminal? I'm a benefactor to the broken, to the people." We move on. If these guys, and I'll read you right here, but if Al Capone and this Two Gun Crowley guy and any desperate men and women behind prison walls don't blame themselves for anything, what about the people with whom we come in contact with on a day-to-day basis? People hate to be scolded, and that's what this first chapter is. Do not kick the beehive, my friends. People do not want to be scolded. 99 times out of 100, people don't criticize themselves for anything, no matter how wrong it may be. We do not take a look deep enough in ourselves and say, "I am wrong. I am the one who is wrong." We have that doubt avoidance, that psychological denial that says, "There's no way I could be wrong." We hate, and we hate when other people tell us that. Oh, we hate it. And I love how this book starts out with this about scolding. About how important it is not to scold. Socrates said, "Do not do to others what angers you if done to you by others. Do not do to others what angers you if done to you by others. We don't want to be scolded, so we should not scold. If we can learn this fundamental, people hate to be scolded. Criticism is futile because it puts a person on the defensive and usually makes him strive to justify himself. Criticism is dangerous because it wounds a person's precious pride. It hurts his sense of importance and arouses resentment. A psychologist said, by criticizing, we do not make lasting changes and often incur resentment. As much as we thirst for approval, we dread condemnation. That's one way to get someone to turn completely away from you. And I'll leave you guys with this. There's a lot to think about here, about how we scold. When I read this, all the times where maybe someone's asked me for help even, and it's been subtle, and I've said, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong. I start the conversation with what you're doing wrong, how you've messed up, and maybe it was a sincere way to try to point out and help them improve. But far too often, I forget that in here, people hate to be condemned. They hate to look at themselves as failure, that there's any failure that happened within them, that they've made a mistake. So think about this. Never to scold. There you are. Human nature in action. Wrongdoers blaming everybody but themselves. We are all like that. So when you and I are tempted to criticize someone tomorrow, let's remember Al Capone and this two-gun Crowley. Let's realize that criticisms are like homing pigeons. They always return home. Let's realize that the person we are going to correct and condemn will probably justify himself or herself and condemn us in return. Chapter 1, guys, on how to win friends and influence people. This is if you want to gather honey, don't kick over the beehive. See you guys soon.